Governor Hogan asking, mentioning the other day that he wants to start doing something about the corruption. I hope that he will reach out to this wonderful group of citizens and start working with us. One of the problems that I have with things that are happening in Baltimore County, and that's basically what this meeting is about, in the state of Maryland, is the intimidation that goes on from our political officials.
I want to thank Dundalk TV and Scott Collier, Adam Rudner, and Alan Robinson for giving me the opportunity to have this videotape hopefully sent to the Governor of Maryland. I watched the State of the State message the other day and heard Governor Hogan say that he would like to have more transparency in government, and found out a week later that the lawmakers are wanting to bypass the governor and let the Attorney General proceed with lawsuits if they deemed it necessary. When Governor Hogan made the comment about the Attorney General lying about the cost, that is only the tip of the iceberg. What I'm about to share with you are some things that you may not be familiar with that's going on in our own communities. Merritt Park Baptist Church knows firsthand what happens to anyone who asks for transparency within government agencies. After we filed a report some years ago, actually 6 years ago, about the probation agents dropping cases back in the community, we received a cease and desist order from the health department that we were to shut down our 40-year-old program. The cease and desist order was never enforced, it was never retracted, but it was given to the director of parole and probation, a gentleman by the name of Joseph Clocker, who taken the cease and desist order and went to the county courts and gave it to the courts and letting them know that we were operating an illegal treatment program. This was after 35 years working with the state. This was after 35 years working in the community. And I showed the state the letter from parole and probation dated back from 10/31/11, where it clearly states that our program was never a treatment program. We tried to find treatment for people. And I'm going to leave these here for you, Scott, if you want to see them a little bit later on. So what happens is that we were trying to clear the church's name. If you own a business or you have a church and your church gets a cease and desist order, that is telling everybody in the community you're doing something wrong. We had Cobra Investigations, which I owned at the time, do a complete investigation. We were licensed by the Maryland State Police. We sent that to the Governor of Maryland. That was the previous administration. That was ignored. We had affidavits where people were on probation that signed the affidavits where their probation agent actually lied to judges and said that they were finishing programs that they never finished. I had emails come to me from agents within the parole and probation who openly said, we were working the day the state came down and had a disagreement with the supervisor. And they said to that supervisor, if you retire quietly, we will make sure we destroy Dr. Wright and all of his programs. Now, that was in writing by an agent, and the evidence was overwhelming what they were doing in the community. So what we tried to do was we tried to let everybody know that there was case dumping in the community, and it would lead to higher crime, and people would have to pay the penalty for the case dumping, and cataclysmic events would take place. Within the last 7 years, I have notified every councilman, every delegate in our district, and everybody I possibly could to let them know about the case dumping. And what has happened is that a lot of times individual people seem to think that the streets are safe and it's okay for us to go out, when in fact the crime rate has risen. I understand that Todd Crandall had a friend of his that was saying something about bringing a motorcycle gang in the community and let them try to resolve the crime issue. A gentleman by the name of Frank Lotman and I met with Mr. Crandall at his office, and Todd Crandall said to me openly, he said, unless we have it in the budget about crime issues, I can't do anything for you. And here we go years later, weeks later, months later, and we're finding that a lot more happened than we realized. The first child that died was 3 years old. She was killed by a drunk driver that was attending our class that needed treatment. The second child died. She was raped, beaten, and strangled to death in Cecil County. She was 8 years old. There was a lady in Anne Arundel County that was stabbed 34 times, and she died. The young man that stabbed her, or allegedly stabbed her, was in my program. We tried desperately to find treatment for him, and we couldn't find it. When I asked the state to please give to me a list of programs where we could send people for treatment, Kathleen Morse, who is the counsel for Department of Health and Mental Hygiene from the Attorney General's office, said this: there are no free programs from the state. There are none. Contact your county. One of the other things that concerned us, that we were having a large number of our young men and women coming in, and they were being charged for drug and alcohol tests that they never got. And we started adding this up. We're talking about thousands of people over the state of Maryland that they're being charged for drug and alcohol tests by probation agents, and they're never getting the test. What happens is, if they don't pay the fee or the bill then goes to collections. A high interest rate is put on that. If they still can't collect the fee, they then group them all together and sell these bad debts to other collection agencies. And the individual people aren't getting the service to even begin with. So one of the things that we were trying to do was to try to help the offenders out, because money is tough for everyone. One offender asked for his $600 and some back. They refused to give him any money whatsoever. And what he had to do is, he's trying to fight them. He'll have to probably wind up suing them and be lucky if he gets anything in return. If the state had to pay back the money to every individual person that's on parole and probation, and I think there was like 900 and some thousand that was on probation in Baltimore County, I think, in the last year or so. If you take that Maryland-wide, and they had to pay that money all back that they charged these people illegally, you'd be talking about millions and millions of dollars. So the corruption doesn't stop at parole and probation. One of the other things that's going on that a lot of people are unaware of is this new drunk driving law. Anybody arrested that has a DUI has to go to a certified program. But what they don't tell you is a certified program is a treatment program. I had a doctor come to me, did the evaluation. He said, if I have to go to a treatment program, I will lose everything I have. And he was a social drinker. He showed no signs of alcohol or drug abuse whatsoever. The same thing that could happen to you or your children, and that automatically puts them in a treatment facility, early education. It's like having stage 1 of cancer. You still have to go to get treated for it, but it's not as bad as stage 4. So we try to share with the people that were responsible for these laws that it was unfair. And what happens is this. The Department of Motor Vehicles has a letter they send out to people that get DUIs. And they say, after court, we will go ahead and we can find a place for you to go. Now, what the state did, unknowns to anyone, they had an outside agency come in, and they took over what's called the Alcohol Education Program. It's called the AEP program. And they can do evaluations, and they can put people into classes, and the business that they own has nothing to do with drugs or alcohol. These are driving schools. So it didn't make any sense what was happening. So we made some phone calls to find out if this was true. And I was on the phone along with 2 other people listening. And the person that owned the driving school said, we're also an abuse center. I said, how can you be an abuse center in a driving school? Well, that's the way that it is. Come to find out that they had a monopoly on the driving schools and first offenders for DUIs. They are also tied into treatment. And when I asked them if I could have information how this particular education group started, and I have a document where they sent back to me an invoice of $30,500 for public information. In other words, they did not want to answer any question whatsoever about this new program or the AEP program. If you get arrested for a DUI, you're going to treatment whether you like it or you don't like it. But the law is clear. The law says you do not have to be certified to teach alcohol drug education unless you're teaching in a treatment setting. So the cease and desist order was nothing more than a ploy that they used and a tactic they used to make us look like we were treatment when in fact we weren't. And that kept the pressure off of a lot of those individual people. I decided to take the case to federal court. I filed in federal court, and I filed suit on all of the supervisors in the health department and also in the parole and probation. I made it clear when I filed the suit, I was doing it for the record only. I didn't plan to win it, but I needed a record of everything that went on and who was involved. So what happened after 9 months, I then made a motion that the state of Maryland charge me with the crime of operating a treatment program illegally and also to fine the church. It was immediately responded back by the health department, and Ms. Kathleen Morris is the counsel for DHMH, and they said, we don't want to charge him. And I then filed another motion for a federal judge to open up a federal investigation with indictments. They came back the second time. We don't want that either. The federal judge agreed with the state and said, well, we're not going to charge you and we're not going to investigate it. In other words, what they can do, they can come into a church, they can close it down or attempt to close it down. They can send Baltimore County fire marshals here and say, if you don't take the paneling down within a year, we're going to come back and close you down. They can come in and they can take part of the church property without even trying to buy it and bully us that way. And the church has had its fill. 40 years I've been at this church. 40 years we've worked in the community. And people to this day will remember, we're getting like third generation of people that are coming into the program. And they are people that I've known for years, and they can't find the help that they need. So one of the things I'm hoping that Governor Hogan can do is to make some of these state agencies more transparent. When I contacted Governor Hogan's chief counsel, Robert Schultz, he emailed me back, and this is what he said. If you feel that you have been wrong, obtain an attorney. And I responded back, if I have to get an attorney to ask for an apology, the apology would mean nothing to me. That's all we asked for, was an apology to clear our church's name, and they still haven't given it to us. And I still to this day am fighting them and will fight them until the last breath I have, because I do not want that looming over the church's head that they were operating something illegal when in fact the state was doing that themselves. The Baltimore County Behavioral Health has a long list of problems, lawsuits, and people that's even been arrested. But Baltimore County Health Department and Parole and Probation and the state of Maryland is catering to this insurance agency when in fact that they will not provide any free programs to anybody that doesn't have money or insurance. We started, our new ministry now is, we started a cemetery outside burying addicts that die from overdoses. We pay for everything free. We give them the ground free. We do everything. We planted flowers so that the parents wouldn't even have to buy flowers. We do the service free. And we're trying to open the eyes of the state, simply saying, we need more transparency. These kids are dying right and left, and I know they need treatment, but they can't seem to find it. One of the things that I wanted to just quickly share with you, this is a case of a young man that came to me on December the 11th, 2014. He had 3 DUIs, and I sent a letter to the courts to his probation agent, Miss Daniels, and I said to her, he needs treatment. We're not treatment. He needs to get some help. Don't let him fall through the cracks. I also send a copy of this to Susan Barron, who is the counsel for parole and probation. And in return, he went to jail for a period of time. He did not get any treatment whatsoever. He has no one has helped him in any way, shape, or form. He came back last week and said, I've got to go to court. I've had a violation of probation. I said, for what? He said, because I'm not in a treatment program. I said, what did you do? He said, I stole. I said, do you have a drug problem now? He said, yes. So what's happening is that on paper, everything looks good. But behind the scenes, it's all about the money. And when I say it's all about the money, if you take money out of the equation, they don't care what you do. They really don't care. But if you fool with the money, if you tamper with the money, if you even indicate that there's something wrong going on, they will come at you and retaliate against you as they retaliated against our church. But here's the drop back to that. We are, and I promise the students that I work with, and I'm promising the people in this community, Merritt Park Baptist Church will clear its name, and as soon as the church's name is cleared, I may think about retiring. If I died, it'd be the biggest funeral in the state. They'd all come to make sure I was dead. But the bottom line is this, is that we as a church, you as parents, we as community members, when we look around and say, why is the crime so bad? Why are things going on? They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. One of the other things is the Justice Department can be called by the governor if he so wishes. If he really is concerned about transparency, he could call the Justice Department in. But the problem is that the Trojan horse is already in Annapolis. These people are already deep-seated. They've got jobs from past administrations, and they're not going to give them anything because one will not tell on the other. But I kept records. 40 years of records. And I have every record of every student, every letter that was ever given to me. And I sent letters to the Justice Department. They came down. The agent Stein from the FBI said, I hope you have a good burglar alarm. I said, we do. I said, everything's backed up on computers. And they were dumping cases. She said, well, there are some ethical violations, but that was the last I heard of her. She was going to send some of the people in to talk to the agents to get, I guess, tapes or whatever they were going to do. But they ended it. Every time that there was a possible opening, it stopped abruptly. Nothing was ever done. The kids continued to die, houses continued to be broken into, and they continued to make all of this money. And what I'm going to...
For anyone who is struggling with drug and alcohol issues in the Dundalk area, please contact Pastor Wright at 410-288-1399 to attend his free drug and alcohol education courses on Thursday nights at Merritt Park Baptist Church.